The air in room 307 crackled with a palpable dread that belied the sterile hum of Sanctuary Hospital. General Octavio Rojas, a man whose unwavering resolve once shaped history, now lay frail and unresponsive, his very life hanging by the thinnest thread. His family, etched with raw anguish, huddled outside, their silent vigil a testament to the beloved leader's precarious state. Inside, Dr. Kenzo Ishikawa, the renowned neurosurgeon, barked orders, his face a mask of escalating frustration, while Dr. Zara Hassan, the brilliant neurologist, frantically relayed plummeting vitals. Nurse Chiamaka Ekwueme, a quiet shadow amidst the elite storm, observed a subtle, alarming tremor in the general's hand, a detail seemingly missed by the frantic experts. "Nurse, focus on basic vitals," Kenzo snapped, his dismissive gaze sweeping over her, as if her presence was an irritating distraction. The familiar sting of being unseen, unheard, tightened a knot in Chiamaka's stomach. They saw a rookie, not the honed precision and unconventional wisdom she carried. But as the monitors shrieked a new, dire warning, and the room spiraled into controlled chaos, a chilling conviction solidified within Chiamaka: they were failing, and soon, her quiet strength would be their only solace. Sanctuary Hospital, a monolith of glass and steel, usually hummed with the quiet efficiency of cutting-edge technology and the hushed reverence of a medical elite. Tonight, however, the operating theater where General Octavio Rojas lay was a tempest. The very air vibrated with a desperate, frantic energy, a stark contrast to the sterile calm the institution prided itself on. Dr. Kenzo Ishikawa, renowned for his surgical prowess and even more so for his towering ego, wiped a bead of sweat from his brow, his voice a strained bark. "Retractor. Now, deeper." His fingers, usually so precise, seemed to tremble with an uncharacteristic hesitation. The monitors around them, a constellation of flashing lights and urgent beeps, sang a symphony of deterioration. Dr. Zara Hassan, her brilliant mind typically a fortress of calm data, now clutched her tablet like a lifeline, her brow furrowed with increasing alarm. "BP dropping, Kenzo. Fast. The swelling is aggressive." Chiamaka Ekwueme, a rookie nurse barely a year out of training, moved with quiet purpose, anticipating needs even as her mind raced ahead of the chaotic scene. She'd already observed the subtle, rhythmic tick in the general's left eye, a faint, almost imperceptible twitch that had escalated since they began. It suggested a different pressure point, a more insidious, deeper issue than the team was currently addressing. Her gut, honed by experiences these esteemed doctors couldn't fathom, screamed a warning. She gently approached the monitoring station, her voice a low murmur against the rising crescendo of medical urgency. "Doctors? I've noticed a consistent lateralization, and the ocular tic has intensified. Could the hemorrhage be more posterior, perhaps deep in the cerebellar vermis, affecting brainstem pressure directly rather than solely cortical?" Kenzo paused, his hand hovering over the general's exposed scalp. He turned, his gaze cold and dismissive. "Nurse Ekwueme, your job is to maintain instrument sterility and monitor vitals as instructed. We have the world's leading neurologists and neurosurgeons here. Your observations, while noted, are not required." The patronizing tone, the barely concealed sneer, felt like a slap. Zara, without even looking up from her readouts, offered a curt, "Stick to the basics, nurse. This is a delicate procedure, not a guessing game." The humiliation stung, but Chiamaka swallowed it, her jaw tight. This was Sanctuary Hospital, where expertise was measured by diplomas and reputation, not by quiet, unorthodox insight. She was just a rookie, an invisible cog in their gleaming machine. But the general's life hung in the balance, and her earlier tremor in his hand, the ocular tic, the plummeting vitals, it all screamed of a misdiagnosis, a critical oversight. "Another bleed, anterior temporal," Zara suddenly exclaimed, her voice cracking with thinly veiled panic. "We're losing him, Kenzo." Kenzo cursed under his breath, his previous confidence evaporating under the intense pressure. The team, previously a well-oiled machine, began to falter, their movements growing hesitant, their voices laced with fear. Chiamaka watched as their initial, meticulous attempts to control the hemorrhage began to unravel. The state-of-the-art equipment, the years of specialized training, the collective brilliance of the elite team, none of it seemed sufficient. The general's life was slipping away, not with a bang, but with a series of desperate, failing whispers from the machines. Chiamaka's heart ached, a silent plea forming in her mind, they need to see what I see. But she knew, with a crushing certainty, that they wouldn't. Not yet. The weight of their arrogance was a heavier burden than the general's failing health. The monitor's shrill, relentless shriek was a physical assault. General Rojas' blood pressure plummeted, a digital readout dropping like a stone from a cliff. His heart rate, previously an erratic rhythm, now throbbed with a desperate, failing cadence. Zara's voice, once sharp, was now a ragged gasp. Pressure dropping further. He's going into hypotensive shock, Kenzo. Dr. Kenzo Ishikawa, his brow furrowed in a mask of grim determination, leaned closer to the intricate brain images, the frustration coiling visibly in his shoulders. Damn it! The deep interior temporal bleed, it's spreading, but the access is compromised. Too much edema, too much pressure from the initial trauma. We can't get a clean line in without risking further damage. He slammed a gloved fist softly against the sterile console. Our current approach is failing. Zara snapped back, her own fear manifesting as aggression. Perhaps if your initial dissection hadn't been quite so aggressive, we wouldn't be dealing with this level of secondary swelling, Kenzo. This isn't just a bleed, it's a cascading failure. My dissection was precise. Kenzo retorted, turning sharply, his eyes flashing. It was your delayed recognition of the secondary venous rupture that put us behind. The surgical team, previously focused, now looked between the two titans, their confidence wavering. The air crackled with a dangerous blend of professional animosity and primal fear. General Rojas' life hung in the balance, ignored amidst their escalating squabble. Chiamaka, standing a discreet distance away, felt a cold dread seep into her bones. Her eyes, trained on the monitors and on Kenzo's struggling movements, saw something they couldn't or wouldn't acknowledge. The standard approach, though textbook for brain hemorrhages, was a death sentence here. The swollen tissue, the intricate vascular network, it was like trying to navigate a minefield blindfolded. Her mind flashed back to the dusty, makeshift clinics, to the desperate, ingenious solutions born of necessity. Angle of entry, pressure points, release valve. She took a hesitant step forward, her voice a quiet ripple in the storm. Dr. Ishikawa. Dr. Hassan, with the amount of diffuse cerebral edema and the specific vector of the anterior temporal bleed, a direct line might not be optimal. Perhaps a lateral approach, a microventriculostomy to relieve some pressure first, could offer a safer, more stable entry point, even from a less conventional angle. Kenzo's head whipped around, his eyes narrowing to angry slits. Nurse Ekwueme, he barked, his voice dripping with condescension, are you presuming to advise me on neurosurgical strategy? Have you forgotten your place, observing, not interfering? Zara scoffed, a humorless sound. A lateral approach from a junior nurse? What, did you pick that up from a YouTube video, Chiamaka? We're not performing back alley surgery here. This is Sanctuary Hospital, not a field tent. We follow protocols, not hunches. Her words were laced with an icy disdain, a clear message that Chiamaka's input was not just unwelcome but contemptible. A hot flush rose to Chiamaka's cheeks, but she held her ground, her gaze unwavering. With respect, Dr. Hassan, the conventional approach is exacerbating the edema. The pressure is compounding. A field-expedient pressure release could give you the window you need. Enough. Kenzo roared, his patience shattered. Get back. Focus on your charting, nurse. Your field-expedient nonsense will only kill the general faster. Chiamaka retreated, her heart sinking, but her gaze remained fixed on the monitors, on General Rojas. His vital signs continued their terrifying descent. The flat line threatened, a silent promise of finality. The room was now a maelstrom of desperate activity. Instruments clanged, suction hissed, and the medical team barked orders at each other. He's coding, someone shouted. Lost pulse. Start compressions. Kenzo bellowed, abandoning the delicate cranial work to supervise the frantic resuscitation efforts. "Give me AP. Now." The controlled chaos had devolved into outright panic. General Rojas' body jolted under the rhythmic force of compressions, a macabre dance with death. Chiamaka watched, her fists clenched, her mind racing. They were so close to losing him. So close. She could almost feel the phantom weight of a makeshift scalpel in her hand, the heat of a crude cautery, the desperate rhythm of a heart she'd once fought to restart with nothing but her bare hands and sheer will. They were missing something crucial, blinded by their protocols and pride. The general wasn't just critical, he was minutes away from irreversible brain death, if not already there. The silent screams in Chiamaka's head were deafening, battling the urgent beeps and shouts around her. Her warnings hadn't just been ignored, they'd been ridiculed, dismissed as the irrelevant babblings of a junior nurse. And now, the cost was being tallied in the fading life of a decorated war hero. The human stakes had never been higher. Chiamaka's struggle is one many of us know, the pain of being underestimated, of having your voice silenced when it matters most. Have you ever felt overlooked, just like our quiet nurse? We believe everyone deserves a chance to shine, and that's why we bring you stories like this. If you're enjoying Chiamaka's journey and want to see more tales of quiet heroes rising, please consider joining our family. Hit that subscribe button and become part of our global community. Your support isn't just a click, it helps us craft more incredible, inspiring stories for all of us to share. We're so grateful to have you with us. The air in the OR was a thick, suffocating blanket of despair. General Rojas' monitor displayed a jagged, increasingly desperate rhythm, each spike and valley a testament to a life slipping away. Dr. Kenzo, sweat beading on his brow, barked orders that seemed to dissolve into the frantic chaos. Dr. Zara stood rigid, her earlier dismissiveness replaced by a chilling paralysis. They were losing him. The words echoed in Chiamaka's mind, not as a prognosis, but as a personal failure if she didn't act. Then, a new voice, laced with steel and utter desperation, cut through the din. It was General Rojas' daughter, standing firm at the threshold, her eyes blazing with a potent blend of grief and resolve. "My father's life depends on this. You will listen to Nurse Ekwueme. She saw things, she warned you, and now you will listen." Her words, backed by the implicit authority of the general's family, landed like a thunderclap. Kenzo flinched, his head snapping up. His gaze met Chiamaka's, a turbulent mix of anger, shame, and a terrifying, desperate hope. His ego, battered and bleeding, wrestled with the stark reality, his methods were failing. He had exhausted his options. "Fine," he grated, his voice raw. "Nurse Ekwueme, you may advise. But stay out of the sterile field. Don't you dare touch anything." It wasn't an invitation, it was a reluctant, humiliating surrender born of abject failure. For Chiamaka, it was less a permission and more a lightning bolt. Her world tilted. The fear, the suffocating fear of protocol, of repercussions, of the professional abyss that awaited a rookie nurse who dared to overstep, threatened to engulf her. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of terror. This wasn't a dusty, makeshift clinic under a flickering bulb. This was Sanctuary Hospital, a temple of surgical orthodoxy. Every fiber of her professional conditioning screamed no. But then, another image flashed, searingly vivid, the pale face of a child in a bombed-out village, the raw, frantic panic of a soldier bleeding out on an improvised stretcher. In those moments, fear hadn't been an option. Hesitation had been a death sentence. Her hands, calloused not from surgical gloves but from the desperate, ingenious improvisation of war, began to tingle. Her mind, once dismissed as overthinking, was already dissecting the problem with a terrifying clarity that bypassed sterile protocols and grand pronouncements. This wasn't about ego, it was about a life. Another life. And the quiet nurse, the one they had all ignored, knew exactly what was needed. A strange calm descended upon her. It was the calm of the storm's eye, a deep, ancient peace found only in the face of insurmountable odds. The tremor in her hand stilled. Her breath, which had been shallow and ragged, deepened, slowing into the rhythmic breathing of a marksman about to take a critical shot. Her eyes, usually downcast, lifted. They swept across the monitors, across the frantic faces, across the general's pale, still form, and finally landed on Kenzo. There was no judgment in them, only an unwavering, laser-focused intent. Dr. Ishikawa, Chiamaka's voice, though still soft, carried an unexpected resonance. It was quiet, yet it cut through the residual panic like a sharpened blade. The conventional Trans-Sylvian approach is being obstructed by the extent of the edema. We're wasting precious time trying to navigate it head-on. She paused, letting her words sink in. Kenzo stared, mouth agape. Zara, too, looked up, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. Given the acute swelling and the location of the bleed, Chiamaka continued, her gaze now fixed on the 3D scans projected on the wall, we need to consider an alternative trajectory. A more oblique, subtemporal approach, bypassing the densest tissue. Her words weren't a question. They were a statement of fact, delivered with the quiet, unshakable authority of someone who had seen this scenario play out in the harshest classrooms imaginable. The quiet nurse had vanished. In her place stood a woman transformed, radiating a fierce, quiet courage that was utterly disarming. She was no longer just Chiamaka Ekwueme, rookie nurse. She was a guardian of life, her instincts honed in fire, now fully engaged. The emotional risk was immense, her professional future hanging by a thread, but the life of General Octavio Rojas was paramount. She took a step closer, her focus absolute, ready to guide them through the darkness. A tense hush descended upon the operating room, thick with the scent of antiseptics and the metallic tang of fear. Dr. Kenzo, his face a mask of strained professionalism, nodded curtly at Chiamaka. "All right, Nurse Ekwueme. You have the floor." Indirectly. His tone was laced with a palpable reluctance, a concession born of desperation, not conviction. Zara, perched on a stool, arms crossed, watched with a critical, almost cynical, gaze. The monitors pulsed with General Rojas's fragile vital signs, a relentless, rhythmic reminder of the tightrope walk they were about to embark upon. Kenzo made the initial incision, a practiced, confident line. But as he began the delicate work of cranial access, a sudden, unforeseen complication arose. A network of unusually distended venous capillaries, not clearly visible on the pre-op scans, began to weep profusely, staining the surgical field alarming crimson. "Damn it," Kenzo muttered, his voice tight. "Unexpected vasculature. It's obscuring the trajectory." Panic, a cold, insidious presence, threatened to seep into the sterile environment. The lead anesthesiologist frowned, adjusting medication, his eyes glued to the dropping blood pressure. Chiamaka, standing a respectful distance but with her gaze unblinking on the surgical field and the real-time scans, spoke, her voice surprisingly steady amidst the rising tension. "Dr. Kenzo," she began, her words cutting through the rising anxiety like a surgeon's scalpel. "The lateral margin of the parietal bone. A slight adjustment. Shift your angle 1 degree anterior, and gently, with the drill, tap, yes, there. Just above the petrous ridge. It's a tighter access, but avoids this plexus." Kenzo hesitated, his hand hovering. The suggestion felt reckless, unconventional, a deviation from standard protocol. Zara scoffed softly, but her eyes were still fixed on Chiamaka. "That's an incredibly tight window, nurse," Kenzo said, "high risk of perforating the dura unnecessarily." "High risk now if you continue through that field," Chiamaka countered, her tone devoid of challenge, simply stating fact. "The swelling will only worsen the bleed. Trust your instinct, Dr. Kenzo, but trust the path less traveled if the usual one is blocked." Something in her unshakable calm, the absolute conviction in her voice, compelled him. He took a breath, the weight of the general's life pressing down. Grudgingly, Kenzo adjusted his approach, shifting the microscopic drill bit with agonizing precision. There was a faint, almost imperceptible tap, and then, miraculously, the bleeding subsided, the deeper layers of the brain now visible through a clearer, albeit narrower, window. A collective, silent gasp rippled through the OR team. Zara leaned forward, her arms no longer crossed. The procedure continued, but it was far from smooth. The brain, inflamed and swollen, was an unpredictable landscape. Instruments snagged, the delicate tissue proved more fibrous than anticipated, and at one critical juncture, a microaneurysm, hidden beneath layers of clot, began to leak, threatening a catastrophic hemorrhage. Pressure. Kenzo barked, his brow furrowed with sweat, his hand shaking almost imperceptibly as he fought to stem the flow. The monitors screamed a dire warning. Suction, Dr. Kenzo. 3 units, low pressure, Chiamaka instructed, her voice a lifeline. And then, the microforceps. Don't chase the bleed. Anticipate the path of least resistance. Aim for the anterior border of the arachnoid membrane, slightly medial. A gentle cauterization there will secure the proximal point. The distal bleed will collapse. It was an audacious, almost counterintuitive move. Most surgeons would chase the immediate bleeding point. Chiamaka was advocating for a strategic, preemptive strike. Kenzo stared at her, then back at the monitor, his face a mixture of bewilderment and reluctant awe. "Are you certain, nurse?" he asked, his voice strained. "I am," she replied, her eyes burning with an intense focus that bordered on preternatural. "I've seen it before. In far worse conditions." With a leap of faith born of desperation and the undeniable evidence of her earlier accuracy, Kenzo followed her guidance. His hand, guided by Chiamaka's calm, unwavering voice, moved with a newfound, almost hypnotic precision. The microforceps entered, found their mark, and with a controlled burst of energy, the microaneurysm was sealed. The bleeding ceased. The monitors stabilized, pulling back from the brink of disaster. A profound silence filled the room, punctuated only by the rhythmic beeping of the machines. Kenzo looked at Chiamaka, his initial dismissiveness replaced by a dawning, incredulous respect. Zara, her eyes wide, lowered her glasses slowly. This wasn't just a nurse, this was a maestro, conducting a symphony of life and death with quiet, almost terrifying, brilliance. The operating room, once dominated by the ego of the surgeons, now revolved around the unassuming presence of Chiamaka Ekwueme. The impossible, it seemed, was beginning to unfold. The air in the operating room, previously thick with the suffocating dread of impending loss, now exhaled a collective, shuddering sigh. The cessation of bleeding wasn't just a medical event, it was a physical sensation, a sudden lightness that lifted from every shoulder. Kenzo, his gloved hand still poised, stared at the monitor, then at Chiamaka, a silent question in his eyes, "Is it truly over?" Chiamaka met his gaze, her own eyes, though weary, held a steady reassurance. "The immediate threat is contained, Dr. Ishikawa," she murmured, her voice still quiet but now resonating with an undeniable authority. "Now, we secure the field and ensure no further complications." Her words weren't a command, but a calm, methodical continuation, a map offered after the storm. And Kenzo, astonishingly, listened. The arrogance that had been his constant companion seemed to have evaporated, replaced by a raw, profound respect. He found himself moving almost instinctively to her next, soft-spoken directions. "Cauterize here, Dr. Ishikawa, small suction, please, confirm tissue integrity at 5 o'clock. Each instruction was precise, economical, devoid of any "I told you so" undercurrent. It was purely about the general, about bringing him back from the precipice. Zara, who had been holding her breath so long her lungs ached, felt an unfamiliar warmth spread through her chest. She watched Chiamaka, not as a nurse, but as a master craftsman, meticulously overseeing the final, delicate strokes of a masterpiece. The brilliant urologist, usually so sure of her own superior intellect, was profoundly humbled. She had scoffed at this quiet woman, dismissed her field trauma as irrelevant. Now, she saw the sheer, unadulterated genius of it, the ability to see beyond conventional boundaries, to improvise life where others saw only an impasse. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, the monitors began to sing a new song. The erratic peaks and troughs of the brain activity smoothed out. The general's heart rate, once a frantic drumbeat of crisis, settled into a strong, steady rhythm. The pallor on his face, previously a stark announcement of his fragile hold on life, seemed to soften, taking on a healthier hue. Each beep, each digital readout, was a tiny triumph, a step back from the abyss. When Chiamaka finally whispered, "The procedure is complete, Dr. Ishikawa. The general is stable," it was like a dam breaking. The relief that flooded the room was so potent it was almost visible. Shoulders slumped. Unheard sobs caught in throats. The scrub nurse, who had been a statue of tension, quietly wiped a tear from the corner of her eye. The anesthesiologist let out a long, shaky breath, his own relief painting a vivid picture of the ordeal. Kenzo slowly straightened, his eyes still fixed on the general, then he turned fully to Chiamaka. For a long moment, he simply stared, his face a complex mosaic of exhaustion, awe, and an unfamiliar humility. He extended a gloved hand, hesitantly at first, then more firmly. "Nurse Ekwueme," he said, his voice husky, stripped of its usual bravado, you saved him. You saved the general." It wasn't just an acknowledgement, it was an admission, a public surrender of ego, spoken with a sincerity that reverberated through the now silent room. Zara stepped forward, her glasses pushed up on her head, her face etched with raw emotion. "Chiamaka," she began, her voice unusually soft, I was wrong. Terribly wrong. Your insight, your skill, it was nothing short of miraculous." Her words were a torrent of catharsis, not just for herself, but for the unspoken biases that had almost cost a life. Chiamaka simply nodded, a small, tired smile gracing her lips. There was no gloating, no victory dance. Just the quiet satisfaction of a job done, a life saved. The adrenaline that had fueled her for hours began to recede, leaving her feeling profoundly spent. Yet, a deep, quiet joy settled in her heart. She hadn't sought glory, she had sought to help. And in helping, she had not only saved a life but had also, perhaps, begun to heal a fractured system. As the team began the careful process of preparing General Rojas for transfer to recovery, the room felt different. The hierarchical lines, once so rigidly drawn, seemed blurred. The collective experience of clinging to a life and pulling it back from the brink had forged a new kind of respect, a silent understanding that transcended titles and reputations. The quiet nurse, who had been dismissed and overlooked, had just orchestrated an impossible victory, and the emotional reverberations of that triumph promised to resonate long after the surgical lights dimmed. The hushed tension of the operating room had given way to the equally charged atmosphere of the critical care unit, where General Octavio Rojas lay, now stable, breathing on his own. Days bled into a slow, agonizing recovery, but the immediate danger had passed. Kenzo and Zara, along with the rest of the surgical team, visited daily, a pilgrimage of sorts, each visit a subtle act of penance and dawning reverence. They watched Chiamaka, whose quiet presence remained a constant, vigilant force by the general's bedside. She monitored the readouts, adjusted the 4 drips, her touch gentle, her gaze unwavering. The meticulousness that had guided the surgical instruments now governed the delicate art of recovery. Then came the day General Rojas opened his eyes, truly opened them, clarity returning to their depths. His gaze swept the room, pausing briefly on Kenzo and Zara, a flicker of something unreadable in their direction, before settling on Chiamaka. A weak, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. He tried to speak, but his voice was a mere rasp. Chiamaka, anticipating his needs, offered him water with a straw, her movements fluid and practiced. Later that afternoon, during rounds, the general was significantly more alert. Kenzo, ever the primary surgeon, approached, a hesitant respect coloring his tone. "General, it's truly remarkable. A full recovery seems within reach." Rojas nodded slowly, his eyes still fixed on Chiamaka. He then did something that stunned the entire medical entourage into a profound, embarrassed silence. With immense effort, his arm, still weak, rose. His fingers, trembling slightly, came together, and he executed a slow, perfect, military salute directly at Chiamaka. The gesture hung in the air, weighty and unexpected. Kenzo's jaw slacked. Zara's carefully constructed composure shattered. The attending nurses gasped, some openly weeping. Chiamaka, caught entirely off guard, flushed a deep crimson, her eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and discomfort. She tried to step back, to deflect the honor, but the general's gaze held her. His voice, though still rough, was stronger now, imbued with a quiet power that commanded attention. "Nurse Ekwueme," he began, his eyes never leaving hers. They don't know, do they? Who you truly are." He paused, a ghost of a knowing smile on his face. "This isn't the first time you've pulled me back from the brink, is it?" A ripple went through the room. Kenzo and Zara exchanged frantic, bewildered glances, the pieces of Chiamaka's unconventional insights suddenly beginning to click into a much larger, more impressive puzzle. General Rojas continued, his gaze encompassing the entire stunned team. "Years ago, in a forward operating base outside Kandahar, a suicide bomber attack. Chaos. Blood. Doctors overwhelmed. I was hit bad. A piece of shrapnel near my spine. I was bleeding out, conscious, watching my life ebb away." He took a slow, deliberate breath. And then, a whisper of calm in the storm. A young medic, barely out of training, with hands steady as steel and eyes that saw beyond the immediate horror. She was covered in dust and blood, improvising with what little they had. "She stabilized me. Removed the shrapnel in a makeshift tent. Saved my life that day." He looked back at Chiamaka, his salute still holding, though his arm was tiring. "Sergeant Chiamaka Ekwueme. Combat medic, decorated for valor, 2 tours of duty. Refused further promotion to dedicate herself to direct patient care. Left the service quietly, sought anonymity. But talent like hers, a spirit like hers, it never truly hides." The revelation hit Kenzo and Zara like a physical blow. Their faces, already pale, drained further. The quiet, unassuming rookie nurse they had so casually dismissed, ridiculed even, was a decorated veteran, a hero who had operated under conditions unimaginable in their pristine hospital. Her unconventional problem-solving wasn't a flaw, it was a testament to extraordinary, battle-honed expertise. Her calm wasn't naivete, it was the profound peace of someone who had faced the abyss and returned, bearing the silent wisdom of survival. Chiamaka, though visibly uncomfortable with the spotlight, met the general's gaze with a tiny, grateful nod. She wasn't seeking accolades, she had simply been doing what she knew needed to be done. But in that moment, in the general's unwavering salute and his profound, heartfelt words, she received more than just validation for her skills. She received validation for who she was. Her quiet strength, her deep well of empathy, her unshakable resolve, all the qualities that had been overlooked were now illuminated, recognized as the very essence of her extraordinary character, a character forged in the crucible of selfless service. The room, once filled with professional hierarchy, now vibrated with a different kind of respect. It wasn't just admiration for a skilled medic, it was awe for a selfless human being. Kenzo and Zara, standing there, stripped of their arrogance, felt the full weight of their past dismissals. The transformation had begun. They no longer saw a quiet nurse. They saw a beacon. The reverberations of General Rojas's salute weren't merely audible, they were seismic, shaking the very foundations of sanctuary hospitals' entrenched hierarchy. For a moment, the room held its breath, processing the impossible revelation. Dr. Kenzo Ishikawa, renowned for his unwavering composure, found his meticulously constructed professional facade crumbling. Beside him, Dr. Zara Hassan, usually quick with a sharp retort, was utterly speechless, her brilliant mind struggling to reconcile the quiet nurse she had so easily dismissed with the decorated combat medic the general had just honored. Shame, hot and undeniable, bloomed in their chests, eclipsing the lingering tendrils of professional pride. The hospital leadership, always attuned to high-profile cases, quickly recognized the gravity of the situation. The incident with General Rojas wasn't just a medical triumph, it was a profound institutional failure that had miraculously redeemed itself. An internal review, far from punitive, became a catalyst for change. It was a stark reminder that expertise could reside anywhere, often hidden beneath layers of perceived status. A new initiative, Sanctuary Voices, was launched, encouraging all staff, from orderlies to consultants, to share observations and insights without fear of ridicule. The hospital, once a beacon of technological prowess, began its transformation into a sanctuary of collective wisdom and mutual respect. Chiamaka Ekwueme, true to her nature, didn't embrace celebrity. She remained the quiet nurse, her movements precise, her observations keen, her empathy boundless. Yet, everything around her had shifted. Her voice, once an unheard whisper, now carried weight. Colleagues sought her out for her unique perspective on complex trauma, not just for her surgical skill. She was invited to help develop new protocols for high-pressure situations, integrating her battlefield ingenuity with the hospital's advanced resources. Her authentic life wasn't a departure from nursing, but an expansion of it. She didn't have to prove herself anymore, she simply was. Her quiet strength, no longer a barrier, became her greatest asset, allowing her to mentor younger nurses and even junior doctors, teaching them the invaluable art of improvisation, the sanctity of every life, and the profound power of calm under pressure. Kenzo and Zara's apologies came days later, once the initial shock had worn off, replaced by genuine introspection. Kenzo, humbled beyond measure, approached Chiamaka in the quiet solace of the break room, a rare vulnerability in his eyes. "Chiamaka," he began, his voice uncharacteristically soft, I was wrong. Terribly, unforgivably wrong. Your skill, your courage, your absolute dedication. I let my ego blind me. Please, forgive my arrogance." Zara, equally contrite, echoed his sentiments, admitting that her intellectual pride had overridden her judgment. They didn't just apologize for their dismissive behavior, they apologized for their narrow-mindedness, for almost letting a life slip away because they refused to see beyond a uniform. Their transformation was perhaps the most poignant consequence. Kenzo, once a lone wolf in the operating theater, began actively seeking diverse input, fostering a more collaborative environment. He championed the Sanctuary Voices initiative, becoming its most vocal advocate. Zara, too, shed her dismissive edge, learning to listen with genuine curiosity, understanding that true intelligence lay not just in knowing, but in continuously learning from all sources. They didn't become different people, but better versions of themselves, more empathetic, more open, ultimately more effective doctors. Their change inspired others, demonstrating that humility was not a weakness, but a profound strength. General Rojas made a full recovery, a living testament to the power of unconventional wisdom and the courage to challenge the status quo. He never forgot Chiamaka, becoming a quiet advocate for valuing hidden talent and promoting a culture where every voice held potential significance. Sanctuary Hospital, once a gleaming monument to scientific prowess, began to evolve into something deeper, more human. The shift wasn't immediate or absolute, cultural change rarely is. But a seed of hope had been planted, watered by the general's salute and tended by Chiamaka's quiet resolve. It was a testament to the idea that true progress wasn't just about cutting-edge technology, but about cutting through ego, fostering connection, and recognizing the extraordinary in the unassuming. Chiamaka Ekwueme, the quiet nurse, didn't just save a life, she ignited a quiet revolution, proving that the most profound strength often resided not in the loudest voices, but in the deepest wells of human spirit, waiting for the right moment to shine. The hospital became a place where quiet strength was not just tolerated, but celebrated, where the humblest among them could, and did, change everything. Isn't it incredible how quiet strength can spark the most profound change? Chiamaka's story reminds us that true heroism often lies hidden, waiting for a chance to shine. What unsung heroes have inspired you? We'd love to hear in the comments. If this tale resonated with your heart, please consider subscribing to our channel. Join our growing global community, where together, we explore stories of courage, resilience, and the power of the human spirit. Your support truly helps us create more inspiring narratives like this one. Thank you so much for watching and being such a valued part of our journey. We appreciate you.